Hey, what's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? It's your boy Chris. It's your boy Chris. It's another amazing episode of Financipation. This channel is all about making money. This channel is all about saving money. It's all about building generational wealth, and it's all about financially emancipating yourself from generational poverty. On this channel, everybody, I try to give you a six-figure MBA level worth of investing and financial knowledge for free here on YouTube. And the things that people typically spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to learn in grad school, I give it to you for free here on this channel. Before I go any further, everybody, I want you to give a shout out to one of my sponsors, Kilico Solutions. They're the ones who do all these dope edits for my videos, and they're fire. So my advice is, if you're looking for a company that's going to do website development for you, or to produce some digital content, or to edit your YouTube videos, you will not do better than Kilico Solutions. I promise. Okay. So also, before I get started, please hit that notification bell, and please like, please comment, please subscribe, so you know when I drop new content. And I thoroughly enjoy giving you guys financial knowledge for free. Okay. So after last week's reception for essentially index funds and how they could potentially make you a millionaire, I wanted to do a podcast on the differences between mutual funds and index funds. Because I got a lot of questions and messages or whatever online in regards to what is a mutual fund, what is an index fund, and what are the differences. Because a lot of people honestly think they're the same thing or whatever. So that's what this podcast is going to be about. In general, everybody, both index funds and mutual funds are popular because in general, they allow you to diversify your retirement portfolios without picking individual stocks on your own. It basically eliminates some risk, okay? And allows you to be very diverse. And with both an index fund and a mutual fund, you can essentially spread your assets across an extremely large swath of industries that includes everything from finance to real estate to healthcare to technology to the U.S. military, you name it. And having said that, however, as I stated earlier, there are some very key differences between index funds and mutual funds, and that's what we're going to talk about in this podcast. Okay. So before we get started, there's some background information. I had an individual basically reach out to me and tell me he only invests in Tesla, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and a Facebook or whatever. And I told him that was very dumb. And when I told him that, he was very surprised about it. So when he started asking me why, I basically gave him the same analogy I'm about to give you. In the 1970s, everybody, the Fortune 500 list looked extremely different than it does today. To be exact, if you actually take a look at the Fortune 500 list from the 1970s, there are only probably about 11 or 12 companies on that list that you've ever heard of. I find it's kind of interesting that over the last 50 years, literally 89%, almost 90% of the companies that were literally the Teslas, the Amazons, the Facebooks, the Microsofts, or whatever from 50 years ago, 90% of them do not exist today. And once again, in other words, people, if you were that individual who essentially wants to put all of your eggs in the top baskets, the Microsofts, the Googles, the Amazons, the Facebooks, or whatever, there is a very, very good possibility that literally 50 years from now, 40 years from now, when you're ready to retire, those companies no longer exist. So just because a company is essentially the top dog today, in 5 years, it very possibly could be in the red. And in 10 years, historically speaking anyway, there's a 90% chance it could be completely gone. So if you want to drop $1,000, whatever, in Amazon, Apple, Tesla, Facebook, and Microsoft or whatever, because they're on top today, once again, everybody, historically speaking, in 50 years, there is a very good chance that 4 of those 5 companies I just got done naming will be bankrupt and be companies that your grandkids have literally never heard of. For that reason, everybody, in my opinion, it is therefore very dumb to put all of your eggs in 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 baskets or whatever, with the idea that this industry or this company is always going to be around because it's hot today. And historically speaking, that is a terrible idea. Next, let's move on to the meat and potatoes of the podcast. What actually is a mutual fund? Because now that I basically explained to you why I think it's very dumb to pick individual stocks or whatever, what exactly is a mutual fund? So mutual funds are professionally managed investment funds that essentially pool money from hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of investors. So I want you to focus once again on that term, professionally managed, because it is very, very important. When you buy a mutual fund or whatever, you buy a portion of that fund, and that small slice entitles you to a proportional share of all the income that fund particularly generates. And the fund's investment manager or whatever, the individual who essentially runs this mutual fund, they invest the funds that you give them in stocks, in bonds, and in securities on behalf of the fund's shareholders, which is you. Earlier I said or whatever that mutual funds are actively managed. Well, due to the compound effects of interest, mutual funds / index funds are perfect for retirement. And they're also perfect for like your brokerage accounts and your children's 529 and custodial accounts and things of that nature, because essentially allows the interest to accrue in the compound or whatever. And more importantly, it's a very diverse portfolio. In other words, the chances of it failing are significantly smaller. United we stand, divided we fall. And once again, everybody, there are index funds and there are mutual funds, brokerage accounts and everything in Merrill Lynch, in Robinhood, in Vanguard that essentially match the S&P 500. There are index funds and there are mutual funds with Fidelity, with SoFi that essentially invest in all 3,000 to 5,000 stocks in the U.S. stock market or whatever. There are index funds with Charles Schwab, JP Morgan, Vanguard and everything that essentially invest or whatever in the technology and the hospitals and all that kind of stuff. So think of it like this, everybody. Stocks or whatever, imagine if you walk into a huge candy store that has 1,000 pieces of candy. Buying a stock will be like walking up to one of the registers or one of the booths or whatever and picking a piece of candy, buy very large pieces of candy or whatever, spending your money and walking out of the store. Purchasing a mutual fund or index fund would be like buying a huge bag that has extremely small portions of all 1,000 pieces of candy inside the candy store, buying that and then walking out. With that huge bag, you're a lot more diverse. You're a lot more spread out. You basically have a lot more chances to find things that you like, whereas as opposed to picking 5 or 10 pieces of candy that you may or may not like. So once again, buying individual stocks is like buying that 1 or 2 pieces of candy or whatever, whereas buying an index fund or mutual fund is like buying that entire bag that has all 1,000 pieces of candy in a very small amount. Next, actively managed mutual funds. For the rest of this podcast, everybody, I'm going to refer to actively managed mutual funds as simply mutual funds, and I'm going to refer to passively managed index funds as simply index funds. So for mutual funds essentially have a team of investment professionals that monitor the stock market. They monitor political scandals. They monitor wars going all around the world. They monitor geopolitics. They monitor emerging markets. And they essentially watch these things 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, 7 days a week. When I was in grad school, I actually worked with individuals who did this kind of stuff or whatever. The idea, everybody, of mutual funds is that this team of extremely brilliant men and women essentially monitor all things that deal with your money, that affect your stocks, your bonds, and as a result, because they monitor this stuff 24 hours a day, 365 or whatever a year, they in theory, they should be able to essentially beat the stock market. And the reason why they should be able to beat the stock market is because they monitor it literally all day, constantly, every day. And also, once again, because you essentially have hired a team of experts to actively manage your mutual fund, the idea is if you go with a mutual fund, you are always going to come up with higher returns on your investment. Why? Because they're watching it constantly. And because they're watching it constantly, they want to get paid. The thing is, though, that's not exactly how it turns out. The next thing we're going to talk about are index funds, okay? So switching from mutual funds and going to index funds. Remember, everyone, that I said an actively managed mutual fund or whatever is supposed to beat the stock market? Well, index funds are supposed to essentially match the stock market. Because index funds do not need constant supervision and don't need an active team of fund managers, the fees and taxes for index funds are significantly smaller. Let me say that again. With an index fund, you pay significantly less in expenses and in taxes because you're only trying to match the stock market. Whereas with a mutual fund, you're spending a lot more money or whatever because you're trying to beat the stock market. And also, everybody, historically speaking, the stock market has averaged 10 to 14% over the last 100 years. Before I go any further, everybody, please hit that notification bell. Please like, please comment, please subscribe. It helps the algorithm, and I thoroughly enjoy giving you guys new content, okay? Mutual funds versus index funds. There are some very key differences, okay? Mutual funds, once again, everybody, are managed by an investment manager. Mutual funds, in theory, are supposed to beat the stock market. So in theory, by beating the stock market, you're going to make a lot more money, in theory. But once again, because mutual funds are supposed to make you more money, they also charge you more as far as fees, taxes, and commissions. Additionally, and mutual funds tend to be more flexible than index funds or whatever, and the fund manager can essentially respond quicker to market conditions with a mutual fund. As a result, in theory, they're supposed to give you more money. However, that's not exactly what happens. These are some of the negatives or whatever of mutual funds. So first and foremost, with a mutual fund, with a portfolio manager trying to essentially outperform the market, what ends up happening is they normally end up making very bad investments that cost you a lot more money or whatever. It actually end up doing worse than the stock market over the long haul. Remember how I said that with a mutual fund or whatever, it's a lot more flexible? Well, that flexibility gets them in trouble because in general, they end up picking bad stocks. In fact, studies actually show that with over a 5-year period, only 14% of mutual funds actually beat the stock market. Over a 10-year period, only 9% of mutual funds actually beat the stock market. And over a 15-year period, only 6% of mutual funds actually beat the stock market. People, in English, that means this. If you can go with a mutual fund instead of an index fund, there is a 95% chance just about that over a 15-year period, you are going to lose money. And it blows my mind that mutual fund managers or whatever have the audacity to essentially charge you all these fees, all these commissions, you pay all these extra taxes for an inferior product. Number 2, mutual funds come, once again, as I just said, I'm saying, with a lot of fees and commissions. The average mutual fund manager or whatever charges anywhere from 2 to 3% for your investments. That 2% may not sound like a lot for a mutual fund or whatever. When you factor in fees, taxes, and things like that, and commissions or whatever, it can literally cost you over a 40 to 50 year period by the roughly 25% of your retirement portfolio by going with a mutual fund instead of an index fund. In essence, everybody, once again, if you go with a mutual fund, you will most likely be paying a lot more in capital gains taxes than you would if you go with an index fund, because you're paying for an inferior product that also charges you more in taxes. Now let's talk a little bit about retirement, okay, and investing just for the future. So mutual funds and index funds, once again, despite the negatives that kind of come with them or whatever, there are a lot. Both of them are actually very good investments. And I would advise all my clients, and I advise all my listeners or whatever, that you need to be investing into something so that you can retire with dignity and with respect. And you're not going to probably do better than a mutual fund and an index fund. Both mutual funds and index funds, they allow you to invest in as many securities and industries at the same time as possible. Once again, remember, you can buy individual pieces of candy or you can buy the entire bag or whatever. That candy analogy or whatever is one that I like to use because it's very applicable to almost anybody. Also, another benefit that I personally like about index funds or whatever, as opposed to mutual funds, is that index funds are low cost. It's a passive income or whatever, and historically it has averaged roughly 10 to 14% over the last 100 years. Whereas mutual funds, they typically are riskier or whatever, and you also pay a lot more in taxes. But in theory, if you find that 6% who actually can beat the stock market, you are going to make more money, full disclosure, over that time period. I say in theory, you're going to make more money because once again, there's literally almost a 95% chance or whatever that if you go with a mutual fund manager, if you go with a mutual fund, you're going to lose money over a 15-year period than if you go with an index fund. In closing, everybody, my family and I use index funds to do roughly 75% of our investing. I'm a mechanical engineer. I'll say that to anyone who's watching my podcast, and I'm a numbers guy. By every definition, I am a long-term investor. I am that way basically through my engineering pedigree, as also well through my MBA and my business pedigree. And studies once again show that if you go with a mutual fund, you are paying more money for an inferior product. And I don't know how much more I can say that. The fact that index funds that match the stock market beat out mutual funds that are supposed to beat the stock market 95% of the time is a fact that I simply cannot ignore. Secondly, index funds typically cost you a lot less in capital gains taxes than mutual funds cost, and index funds have a significantly lower expense ratio than mutual funds do. And the last reason why I personally prefer index funds over mutual funds, I'm a fire and forget kind of guy. I like the speed, the efficiency, and the timing or whatever that comes with index funds. I don't have to constantly watch the stock market. I don't have to constantly jump in and out if I go with a mutual fund. I don't have to spend my entire 16 hours a day watching C-SPAN and stuff like that. I like to invest my money and then basically move off and play with my wife or play with my kid. Simple as that. Short-term investing versus long-term investing. Once again, everybody, if you are a short-term investor, you possibly could make more money off of mutual funds, just because if you find, once again, that 6% of investors who actually can beat the stock market, you are going to make an insane amount of money. Simple as that. But if you're more of a long-term investor, you like to basically buy your property, buy your stocks, and hold that thing for like 40 or 50 years and just let the compound interest just grow and grow and pay very little taxes on it, that's pretty much the way you can go. But I will say this, everybody, in all seriousness, if you are watching this podcast, first of all, thank you and congratulations. But if you're watching this podcast, whether you decide to go with a mutual fund or an index fund, just by the very nature of you watching this podcast, that puts you in a very different state than 99% of Americans. Because sadly, remember everybody, 57% of Americans have less than $1,000 in the bank. So if you are investing in a mutual fund or an index fund and you're actually planning for retirement, that puts you in elite company. If you're watching Financipation or whatever, it also puts you in elite company because you're getting essentially financial knowledge and financial consulting for free. With that, everybody, it's your boy Chris. Once again, this channel is all about making money. It's all about saving money. It's all about building generational wealth, and it's all about financially emancipating yourself from generational poverty. You can book a one-on-one session with me or whatever. Just my link for my website is going to be below. And I'm not giving you financial advice on this channel, everybody. Whether you want to go with an index fund or a mutual fund, you need to do your own personal research based off your own lifestyle and your own personal budget, and do your thorough independent research for your family and for yourself in regards to what you should go with, okay? You can check me on Instagram, @thereal_Financipation. Check out my Spotify channel, Financipation, just like it's spelled right there. Check out my TikTok page, Financipation. Check out my Facebook page as well, Financipation. And check out some of my financial blogs as well. I drop a weekly blog in regards to just different finance things. I go into different steps and different details as far as certain types of things. I go into more detail than I do on this particular podcast. And with that, everybody, check out some of my digital and e-products as well, okay? Hit the notification bell. Please like, please comment, please subscribe. It's your boy Chris. I'm out. Thank you, everybody. And once again, do your own independent research, okay? But you can make a lot of money and retire with dignity and respect with index funds and mutual funds. Peace.